1974, I was working for S&B Engineers, an engineering firm that did oil and gas business, but had also decided to get involved in the municipal engineering business to design water and wastewater plants. S&B Engineer was given the contract to design the wastewater treatment plant for the Woodlands. Woodlands at that time was a new town, 20,000 acres or so, and they were going to do a lot of things bigger and better than anybody else, which they did do. S&B was selected primarily because they had several chemical engineers on their staff, and their expertise was in wastewater treatment, industrial wastewater treatment. And Pete Mitchell wanted his plant to be, shining star, bigger and better than any other. My initial visit to the plant, to the Woodlands, was in 1972. My youngest son, who is Chip, who is now owns an operating company himself, was a baby. And we took a drive to Woodlands on a Sunday after church because we knew they had a flooding problem. It had just had a big rain. I needed to see what the site looked like. So I can remember driving down there with all of our kids, our three older kids, and Chip, who was just a few months old. And that was really my first real view of that site. We were, S&B also had picked up a few other contracts. West Road Mud was one of them. Park 10, I think, was one of them. I don't remember exactly when we started Park 10. There were some districts in A-Leaf that we picked up. And we began talking about the fact that, and I was still doing engineering at that time, but talking about the fact that everybody kind of recreated the wheel. You go to this meeting with this attorney and this engineer, they had this problem, and we go to the next one, they had a different attorney and engineer. And they all, everybody solved the same problems over and over. And, I said, I see this a lot, and I'm not sure who came up with the idea, actually. But we talked about maybe we ought to put a group together so that people can learn from each other. And that was the thrust of it, is how do we learn from each other and not have everybody recreate the wheel. I was thinking about more from an engineering standpoint. And so he had the criteria for the design of the plant were bigger, better than any other plant in the state, most in the country. And he also wanted some limitations on chemicals that were used as fertilizer and whatever that might end up in the water. So there were some additional requirements that other people didn't design to. Begin to learn more and more about how these plants really need to be operated. There was not very much instruction to the operators. Most of them started operating plants because they happened to have some mechanical aptitude and have some time to go out and go to the plants. And most of them were part-time operators who would operate at night. Most of the engineers were basically somewhat versed in the operation of the plants or design of the plants, but they basically used the manufacturer's design. So at that particular time, and I think in some part because of what the Woodlands were doing, we begin to see some upgrading in the designs of those plants in those next few years, in the late 70s. So anyway, we got to talking about maybe we ought to put this organization together and let's just try to learn from each other. And that was the genesis of AWBD. The three of us started. I pulled in Jim Box in particular because I'd gotten to know him through the Greater Houston Builders Association. And I don't think I was doing any work for him at the time, but we just got up. Most of our original members were clients of ours of S&B's, and they showed some interest in what we're doing, and that's where it started.
And my recollection of the first time you and I met was in 1976 at a board of directors meeting of AWBD at the old Engineers Club down on Fannin, south of downtown, that has long since been torn down. And there were 5 or 6 of us maybe in the room, right?
Sounds about right, yeah.
And it was, let's just say it may not have been the beginning, but it was awfully
pretty close. I agree, yes.
So we tried to have some conferences in Houston. You might get 100 people, a lot of whom were consultants. We had trouble getting board members to actually go. And, you know, there weren't that many active districts at the time, because the city of Houston's annexation policy was as soon as a district in its ETJ got fully developed, it just wasn't annexed. Boom, dissolved. And so some of the early districts I worked on, I mean, I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna have this client for a long time, and boom, they were done. They were annexed and gone, right? So my recollection is that when the boom really started in the late 70s, because of the price of oil, and the district business really exploded. With lots of new active districts. There have been a lot of districts created on paper in the early 70s, but they hadn't been activated. And then the boom comes, and all of a sudden we have lots of districts. And then the city annexed, Kathy Whitmire annexed the Clear Lake City Water Authority, annexed the part of Clear Lake City Water Authority that was in Houston. And it caused this massive blowback. And so, and all the people in Clear Lake City were voting against Kathy Whitmire. And she said, no more annexations. These are all people that don't like me. And so she stopped annexing. So for the rest of her term, she did not annex any resident districts. And so all of a sudden now we have, she was there for 10 years. So now we have lots of active districts, residents take over, and we kept getting them to join the association.